completely launched. We've started the show, and it is Planet Green Trees. We're about to embark 2 hours of medical marijuana and marijuana reform in Michigan.
Attention, ladies and gentlemen, the Planet Green Trees show is underway with your host, attorney Michael Komorn.
Alrighty.
We have launched.
We have launched, and we are doing it live.
Doing it live.
It's been a long time. It's good to be back.
Again.
Good to be gathering. Regular Thursday nights. All the distractions and obstacles have been removed from everyone's life.
Yeah. No more severe thunderstorms completely wiping out the power to the office and the surrounding areas.
It's been it's been a challenging year at a lot of different levels. But we're back. And it's great to be back. So is called the episode title. Great is a subjective word. But welcome, everybody. Planet Green Trees, episode 527. Today's date is August the 5th, the year 2021. And it's great to be back. We've been off for about 3-4 weeks, and for various reasons, which maybe we'll talk about. But we've got a great show. We're excited to be back. Everyone's well rested and
I'm not.
Well fed, and
Yeah. I'm
their cup is full, as they say, and ready to give back to the Planet Green Trees spaceship and stuff. Tonight's guest we have with us in the studio here, Mike Fisher of Overgrow, is sitting to my immediate left, and we're happy to have him here. He, of course, is main focusing on design and builds from the ground up, along with business development consulting. He's a partner and founder that's accumulated much information regarding standard operating procedures regarding cannabis and building of cannabis facilities, and indoor environment quality company focused on keeping indoor environments free of pathogenic and microbes which pose a risk to human health and materials of construction. Mike Fisher is with us. We're going to be talking about all of that throughout the show. Thanks for being here, Mike.
Thanks for having me.
Excellent. We also have Rob Robar. I see him, and we might as well introduce Rob, our friend and guest frequent from Helping Friendly Hemp Salve. Rob, of course, is his own business and great product and very popular and healthy and medicinal. All the things you can't say about it, but that's what it is. It's too bad. Please welcome our dear friend Rob Robar.
How you doing, everyone? Thanks again for having me.
Glad you're here.
Great
And
to be here.
we've got an amalgamation of return people here in the studio, and we're going to introduce them. First, moving around the usual method, we've got the Bunker Boys of Tommy and Justin and Dan running the show and responsible for all technology issues that may come up. Next to them are the one and only Jim Powers, founder of Michigan Parents for Compassion and the best non-lawyer that I know. Welcome, Jim Powers.
I'm not a lawyer, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express once, so it's good to be here. Glad to be back. Was a pretty extended vacay, but glad we're back in the saddle, so looking forward to the show.
And by the way, the reference to the lawyer as an observation is not intended to be anything but flattering. Just so you understand. Some may have taken it the wrong way.
Yeah, it's easy to.
I know that, some of the reasons why I was there on Thursday night. I took this guy with me who returned from, planet Neptune. Pluto is where he returned from. And joined me in some Little League baseball coaching, which was a riot. He is our dear friend all the way from the Galapagos Islands and off the back of some dragon iguana. He's an internationally renowned lawyer and guitar player at that as well. Please welcome Attorney Jeff Frazier.
Thank you, Michael. Always great to be here. Play ball.
Plutonium. And off in the Zoom area there, in addition to Rob Robar, we have the one and only Amanda Jocelyn. She's here tonight with us. She, of course, is a YouTuber in her own right and running a medical marijuana certification center. Compassion, what was it? Fucking blanking out.
Certification Center.
Certification Center.
Yep.
And T2 has been traveling the planet and is here to join us tonight and report on some of that. Please welcome Amanda Jocelyn.
Thank you, Michael. And I was wondering if Mr. Fisher could see if that one would meet any standards, or if there would be any bugs or microbes or anything he might need to assess on that.
Looks pretty good. Let me get a little closer up to the screen with my scope and take a look at it.
Michael, have you seen this guy before? This background here?
That's not the one taken from the MCMA site, is it? Because that one has some bad. No, I'm kidding. That does look pretty fresh, I got to say. Would you call it a cola?
No,
Is that a cola for those that don't know?
Yeah.
Not as in the Coca-Cola, but.
Not Coca-Cola for sure, but definitely a cola.
All right, so we have a bunch of topics here. I'm going to read them as a tease, and there's no guarantees we're going to get to any of them, but just for sakes of following some direction here, I may rant. I don't know if that's possible. New documents show Pentagon's rubber stamping police requests for military gear. That's not new. Suspects in marijuana heist leads Wyandotte police on a high-speed chase in multiple cities. Where's Steve Miller on the calling of high-speed chases? We got to get the policies from the police there. And the MRA immature plant sales approval process for clones. This is an interesting phenomena that's developed. There's been 3 or 4 actual recent memos or publications. One dealing with packaging, right, Jim? There's that one. Another one dealt with
that was a good one.
This in plant sales. There's actually we'll talk about this more. And then there's a third one about the pesticides, changing the list of pesticides that are allowable or not allowable.
Yeah.
All right, so that's what we're going to do. We're talking about some of that stuff. I'm going to pull some topics out that I put aside that I like to, throw knuckleball and any other pun or reference to baseball that I can utilize. I'm going to do that. But what I did want to say is this, because the time has come. It's maybe a little premature. No one likes it when anyone's premature. But I would say that I think the time has come. I'm just going to talk about it. We've planned to have a cannabis event.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about it a little bit. So,
Yep.
now
Time to party.
it's time to have an event. And the basic theme, I think, which we can all get behind for this event is that it is time to start to reduce the stigma of cannabis use in social settings. We've gotten to the point now where cannabis is legal. The use of it is legal. There are facilities selling it, textiles, recreation, $110 million a month in transactions. And amongst the types of behavior that would be allowed, other than using it in your own house, using it in private, there is social settings allowable, permitted in consumption lounges, which some may exist, but there aren't many. And there's still a question as to how the cannabis gets there. But there's also this phenomenon of these marijuana event organizer license, which let's say is akin to a pre-qualification where you're authorized to have an event if you can get the city or township to approve your plan. And we've gone about doing that, and we're very excited to talk about that tonight. And it is called CannaJam. CannaJam. It's going to be Michigan's first annual. There's a better way to say it. It's called the
CannaJam
no,
Fest.
No, not the first annual. It's the
Inaugural.
inaugural Cannabis Comedy and Musical Festival, reducing the stigma of cannabis use in social settings. This is what will be taking place there. There will be cannabis sales. There will be cannabis use. There will be comedy. There will be music. There will be food, and there will be a lot more.
Yeah.
When will this occur?
Soon.
It's going to occur on October the 9th. October the 9th. That is a Saturday. And it is October the 9th of the year 2021. Absent of force majeure. It will occur with the doors opening at 12 o'clock and closing at 10 p.m. This event will be occurring at a location in the city of Ypsilanti called Riverside Park. Riverside Park. This Riverside Park in Ypsilanti, Michigan has a capacity of 5,000 people.
Yep. Tell your friends.
They can gather before they shut the state down. We'll be outside, though. We'll be outside, so I think we do get
We will be outside.
the passive.
There'll be a nice cool fall breeze. So bring your parka, bring your windbreaker, and it's going to be a great time. So I hope everybody.
I'm not done
comes out.
talking about it. We still got so much more to talk about. But yes, you're right. It's going to be October 9th. By the way, the weather reports for October the 9th and every year for the last 10 years shows no rain.
Yeah.
It doesn't rain on October the 9th. Never.
This is science.
I'm saying to you that it doesn't rain. There's too much dryness.
Right.
This is a scientific term. My undergrad was in weatherman, and I'm telling you that it's not going to rain that day. And furthermore, the temperature is going to be a crisp fall, 60 to 65 all day.
Oh, that's beautiful.
The sun's going to be at a little bit of a different angle,
Nice-
and all the
nice
trees
fall
at
day.
this particular park are going to be in the process of changing colors.
That's true. That's
Okay?
true.
So that's going to be the backdrop. This park is huge. All kinds of space to do all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And
All of it legal.
all of it legal and licensed. Portions of the proceeds are going to be donated to the John Sinclair Foundation. John Sinclair.
All right.
Also, the Redemption Foundation. Ryan Bassor, guest on this show, has got his own podcast as well. The tickets are going to be still debatable, but we anticipated a general admission fee of $50.
But for how long, Michael?
It's all day.
All
You don't
day.
even know what's going on there yet. I haven't even gotten to. I should have read the ticket prices after because then.
Yeah.
All right.
Now you've
so there's
lost
going to be a general
everybody.
admission ticket. There's a gold ticket, and there's going to be a VIP ticket, and then of course the VIP tent. You'll be able to interact with John Sinclair,
Yeah.
free food, and all kinds of fun stuff happening in the tent. Now, this will be the annual. What is it called? What did I miss? Inaugural comedy festival. The first one, meaning there's going to be more to come. Every year we're going to maybe two days next year. But our headliner is going to be local legend comedian, Southfield born and raised, Mike Young. He's known around the comedy world as Who the F is Mike Young. He's also having a film produced in Detroit. He's filming right now. He wrote it. He's involved with it, directing it. It's being financed by local Southfield person as well, the owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers and Rock Mortgage. And he's going to be in town, and he's agreed to be the headliner at this CannaFest, Michigan's inaugural comedy festival. So he's going to be very funny, and we're going to say he's probably the whole comedy act for his gig is probably going to go around 6:30. And probably done around 7:30-ish. And then, if you didn't think that was enough, and when I say enough, I'm talking about cannabis sales, cannabis use, comedy, music, and food, and more. After Mike Young is done with his set, onto the stage will come this music group known as Echoes of Pink Floyd, the Pink Floyd tribute band and light show.
Lasers.
Lasers.
There will be lasers. And I've been promised they will be playing Shine On You Crazy Diamond parts 1
There's a lot of
through 5.
options yet. We haven't chosen our exact requests of the set to be played. One of the options was the Dark Side of the Moon, cover to cover, with the Wizard of Oz film playing in the background. We're still considering that. But that would be enough, Dianu, if there was just a Pink Floyd. But in addition to all that, we're going to have Michigan's premier licensed cannabis retailers, only the best cannabis in the state.
Yes.
Be approximately 5 to 6 licensed retailers vending, selling cannabis. Those names are not yet ready to be released yet. There's also a lot of opportunities for other vendors, spots available. There's sponsorships, different packages, and the doors will be open at 12 o'clock. There will be some other local artists. For example, a guest on this show at one point, Randy Kaplan,
Yeah.
who
Randy Kaplan was awesome. Everybody loves Randy.
was a musician that plays.
He wrote a Komorn family song, I believe.
We should be able to play that on the show.
I think we should.
But he's going to do a Dylan set. It's going to be a good show. Anyway, so the theme and talking points are we want to reduce the stigma of cannabis use in social settings, and only if we're having events like this where it's normalized, can we take those steps? And further, it's going to be a great opportunity for cannabis companies and brands to be associated with the social use and a familiar brand for these kind of events, which I think need to take place. And I think a lot of people would say because of the lockdown and pandemic, there's a lot of desire to want to be in gatherings. Of course, not at the risk of anyone's health, and sure we'll have to
That's why we're doing it outside.
evaluate the temperature as we get closer to the event itself. But we're very excited about it, and whether it matters or not, we will be talking about it a lot and have some of the vendors on and some of the other people that are going to be participating. And I think it's, at the end of the day, for those that, know me in some of the battles and what's going on, it's going to be an important experience. I think that we can pull this thing off. And I think it's kind of I'd like to think of it as like a community effort, that there's a lot of collaborations that have to take place in order to make it work on all levels. And I know there have been some other events of similar ilk that involve sales and use, but we are going to do it in the heart of Ypsilanti, closest one to Metro, the metropolitan area, and more close in proximity to the larger population. And we'll be able to facilitate that at this park, which is really, really a huge, great space to do this in. So that's just the beginning of what's going to be a lot of talk about this. And there's a lot of other fun things that are going to be added to the bill as we move closer and finalize some of the pieces. But we're excited about that. And anyone interested in participating, you got, you know how to juggle. You got some food trucks. Some food that has to be there.
Yeah.
You want to.
There will also be some non-cannabis vendor spaces,
All kinds of
I believe.
non-cannabis vendors.
So if anyone's interested.
And it's really going to be in the spirit of comedy. I think I like the idea of creating an annual festival that other comedians will want to come play, and that those that participate here and circulate in the comedy world and orbit will talk about this event like it was a place that other comedians should want to play, mostly because the crowd is great and relaxed and laughs at a lot of the jokes that are being told. But we'll see what happens. Anyways, I'm taking some questions. Anybody? All right. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
All right, so we have our first topic here. We can get right into it. Jim, should we take a quick break?
We got to take a break.
Yeah, right at that time.
So you're listening to Planet Green Trees.
And we'll be right back.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
Hi, I'm attorney Michael Komorn of Komorn Law PLC, and you are watching Planet Green Trees.
Everybody's coming back at home, wanna know which we get before we pop in the back of a taxi cab with a body bag, back full of pocket brats, ready to my ass to the shit now. Back there, what's up, 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 we go now.
Here's Michael Komorn with more Planet Green Trees.
All right, we're back. Alrighty, thanks for staying with us. Steve, come on. Let's talk about that in here. No, we're not talking. I know, I'm just kidding.
We're not talking about it in here.
We got a lot of stuff to talk about. I'm just going to go off those. We're going to flip it over here to Mike Fisher, who stands with us. Mike, how you doing? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I got a lot of information that we all want to know about and hear about. But, explain to the people that are listening here what it is that I kind of outlined as your specialty and activities throughout the state involving the cannabis industry or other.
Well, I guess to put it, kind of as simply as possible, I help people get their cannabis businesses started, help them find the right property. If they already have a property or building, look at it and see what they can do with it, and design it, build it out, while giving cannabis-specific consulting along the way to help them be successful as much as I can. And then I also do, troubleshooting and turnarounds. They're already kind of down a path that could use a little bit of correction. But it's been a long, kind of unexpected journey to get here. I started out growing when I was very young, like 15 years old, and kind of had a very, a lot of the same experiences as anybody else, but also had a science background and ended up doing indoor environmental quality work. So I was dialing in environments for hospitals and labs, testing facilities, homes of people who had compromised immune systems, and somebody that I was doing product development work for asked me if I had an ethical dilemma with the cannabis industry. And I thought, well, no. In my mind, I thought I've been growing for 20 years. It's a huge part of my life. But in that world, I was kind of a technical guy and didn't want to be stigmatized at that time. I was more worried about that. But I went into his grow, and I rehung the lights and changed the HVAC and reprogrammed the controllers. And I'm a technical writer. I wrote SOP for it. And it did a good job. I did a good job at it. And so since then, just one thing led to another, and helped another person get started, another person troubleshooting here and there. And I've worked in several states and outside the country, but right now I've been focused in Michigan for the last couple of years.
You're originally from Michigan?
I am from Michigan, yep.
All right. I mean, extrapolate some things out of there. I hear the skills of obviously conceptually growing or caregiving, and also, but there's also the piece of like the infrastructure of a building and the evaluation or vetting of a building that may be a suitable structure, and some of the nuances that come up in terms of the second phase of the licensing process. In other words, there are people that may become pre-qualified where the entity is approved after being vetted by the state, and the individuals are approved and are eligible, but they have to find a facility, it's called, and the facility has to be approved by the state as well. The state is not always focused on the specifics of the grow, how many lights and whatnot, but they certainly are focused on a standardized concept of that's produced by the building fire code and all the rules associated there. So there's a focus on safety, in other words. But the building aspect is interesting because, and explain a little bit about some of your experiences with the clients in terms of what and how to assess a building, when evaluating a project. Can you comment on that?
Sure. Well, first we look at the community and make sure that the building that they're looking at is eligible, and then, like you mentioned, the state has their requirements and definitely focused on safety. Then each different municipality is going to have their own requirements, from their building code to also their cannabis-specific code and the regulations surrounding that. And everybody's always changing everything, so it's can be challenging to navigate. But I just take it on a case by case. Are we going to be able to hire from it? Is there going to be housing if we have to staff it from further away? I could probably go on. I don't know how in depth.
Well, it's interesting because the dynamic of what has to take place in order to get a building approved after identifying those things is kind of elaborate, because you got to have to move forward in most instances. You got to submit a site plan with some architectural plans of how to accomplish that, right? What this,
Yep.
what the architect is going to do, and what it's going to look like, and where everything's going to be. That's going to be necessary for the state, certainly, and in many instances, the locals. But talking about the architecture, there's no like state or city preferred architecture. They just want someone to lay out the plans and the blueprints of the structural changes that meet the proper safety codes.
Yep, for the most part. Some cities have, their safety codes, but also they might have regulations like how many shrubs per linear foot of road-facing building you have. And
Sure.
some things that seem really silly at
Sure.
times, but they're important, and that's what they're looking for, going through there.
Will you take the lead on some of that stuff in terms of the the interactions with the city, or is that something
Yeah.
that's usually?
No, 100%, and that's a big part of it is we're really good at navigating things like that, and all of us have been doing this for a very long time. So once we get the ball rolling, kind of are good at keeping up with communications and making sure that we don't have to go back twice.
Is cryptocurrency becoming something that you're facing?
It's funny. I haven't invested in that, and it hasn't been something that I've personally gotten into. But a friend of mine who's a software engineer involved in cannabis was just, bringing up some. I wish I could explain it as well as he did, but some different ideas for how cryptocurrency might be able to be used, as a placeholder for value to navigate, maybe like incomplete or lacking legislation that.
Well, the federal government's forfeited $1.2 billion worth of cryptocurrency since the beginning of this year. So companies are having to face it and manage it, it appears.
They've seized it from different companies?
No, from drug proceeds, suspected funds,
Yeah.
forfeiture.
From individuals?
Yes, it's made up that much money in individuals because it has become the method of payment in the illegal internet market, right? I mean, you've got the whole dark web and what is it?
The black net.
What is it? The something spice
Silk Road.
Silk Road, yes, Silk
Yeah.
Road. That is, I can't imagine that is. I don't even
Yeah,
want to
because
comment.
that didn't exist before.
Well,
in some
I'm not
other
saying that, but
form.
you now have much more. You've got a huge playing field to participate in that. That you've got access from one place to another place. You can ship something, communicate with someone in another country that's got a lab that and before you had to have a plug somewhere. You had to go get connected. That
Now you just order it.
I mean, no, it's interesting if you think about it because the whole, from the distribution end. The illegal drug market, think about it. There was the French connection.
Yeah.
That was the first and only connection. The mob controlled that in the United States. Then you had these other sources popping up which opened up the market for the distributors. And some of them, would have direct connections with the families that were the makers, the farmers, what not. And, but after those things were solidified, it was a small group of people. You know what I'm saying? Now there's so much more exposure, access to, and that connection you can make from your bathroom. I'm not saying I'm advising them to
ultimate
do that, but I'm saying
inconvenience, I
the
guess.
opportunities there are so many. That's
Oh yeah, it's everywhere.
It's
Everywhere you go. I mean, honestly, the world of I can't believe that the United States Postal Service hasn't gotten more down on what gets trafficked, honestly, because it's everywhere. You know what I mean? It's literally
all drug.
everywhere.
All drugs are marijuana, or do you mean just or any
I'm
drugs?
saying all drugs.
Right.
All drugs is
Everything.
specific. I mean, honestly, I don't care about cannabis, but when it comes to anything like that, you look around, it's literally, I guarantee you, anything, anywhere. If you've got a Facebook account, somebody's hit you up at some point to sell something.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
sure.
It's just the world of the plug is like, and that's why the illegal markets will always exist, because there's always that whole world of just it's never going away.
Well, they would have to, we talk about decriminalizing and legalizing, but you still got to identify the source, right? Because that doesn't, it just creates a legal user with the contradiction of obtaining it from an illegal provider, So you have to.
Yeah.
I think that those are all.
There's a lot of, honestly, like kind of real quick. I mean, if you want to go like to that conversation of like packaging, because that's a big conversation of what's happened in the last couple of months, last month. I'm a branding guy. That's what I do is graphic design. And when I listen to the conversations back and forth, as far as I knew, a lot of the things of not having things they're never allowed. They just kind of got out into the market, and then it just became part of, the culture. But if you look at the bootleg stuff, like we're talking about the plug world and all that, the packaging that you can buy at any head shop now, all that. I don't do a lot of printing of my stuff through overseas channels anymore because I'm worried that the brand can be, put into that.
Right.
Or if you get successful enough, everyone wants a piece.
But you're saying that, like all things, even more so now, the accessibility to things are greater because of the internet and the demand for it.
No, it's like, that's why they're so cracked down on everything, and that's why you can't post your hemp photo. Like I can't say anything about, specific terms and whatever without getting banned. It's because that is everywhere.
Sure.
Instagram everywhere, all of it, all these different apps.
And people sometimes.
Cryptocurrency, though.
Yeah, I was going to ask about.
Cryptocurrency gives it some traceability because you do have to have some sort of a bank account to move that around.
Well,
True.
To convert it.
Convert it, I guess. I mean, I'm probably the last person to talk about crypto.
But in the of what we know and the projections that the accessibility in the dark market are so much more, you got to imagine that only if you got $1.2 billion in forfeiture in 2020 or whatever it is.
Year to date.
Just since when?
Since this year. So
Okay.
far.
1.2 billion. It means that, it's all, it's internet transactions. It's got to be, it's
Sure. They're going to go after.
And
yeah,
I
but
think
it's not all drugs though. It's just not. I mean, the illicit market is much larger than that. And I mean, right off the top of my head, like
all illicit markets allow for the payment of crypto is one of the ways to pay.
Yep.
There's other cash apps. Some of them record, what you say. You know what I mean? They're all accessible. But
Yeah. Dark.
Yep.
But they're going after it, and they're centralizing the forfeitures, the crypto forfeitures, underneath the office of the marshal, federal marshal, and contracting out. Imagine they're taking billions of dollars. Do they sell it? Do they keep it? Do they option it? Do they liquidate it? What the hell do they do?
Yeah.
Because they actually do owe a duty of fiduciary care for things that they seize. So,
until they own it and possess it
Yeah.
and secrete it. I mean, I wonder if this is their way to kind of try to get their foot into the ownership of this currency that they know you know what I mean? Like one of the plays for them would be, we got to go get it all. We're not going to try to compete with the gold. We're going to be the owners of all the cryptocurrency.
well, at $1 billion, they're players. They have a seat at the table.
Yeah.
And that's taken a year and a half
Yeah.
to go from zero to that.
Yeah, they really think it'll be these big guys, the rumors or whatever of Amazon and, trying to enter into illegal cannabis, whatever. I don't.
Well, that's a good point. That's a good point.
It's like
Because
one
if it
of
gets to
those-
be Amazon, it's game over.
Yeah.
Which, right, in one way.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
If that's what's happening. I don't know. You always see various things.
But the ones that have more to lose is law enforcement because it's 40% of their budget, and these forfeitures are everything.
We heard a horrific story today. You wouldn't think that we were still in the United States of America, state of Michigan. And almost like meet the new boss, same as the old boss. It was remarkable. Like even though the stories, the volume of this song and this story and this narrative has reduced a lot, there's not as much. When you hear them, they seem even worse because of the unequivocal state mandate that shouldn't be raiding houses with guns drawn and kicking in doors like the Gestapo and proclaiming that you can forfeit every personal belonging that surrounds it's still a thing. It's interesting. This week we've had a couple cases that we've revisited, that seemingly would suggest that because of this cannabis remaining Schedule 1, it's only because of that, and we've suggested that may be the cure to it. But the social justice issues that remain have been, and we're living one right now, is the CPS and the use of cannabis as a method to be involved with the removal of a child because of cannabis use. Now, the case we got involved is a little bit more dynamic to it because it involves an out-of-state mother and father who encounter a arcane legal system, southern part of the state, southern part of the country, and using their laws, their made decisions of removal. But now we're back in Michigan, and as it goes, there is a an ability and an understanding I'm not quite sure of. What this wedge is that the state feels it needs to insert itself to keep the child and the parent from being reunified. But we're going to find out, and certainly it's not going to be a decision that will be made without making sure all the evidence is presented to the court. That's one of them. That's the one that comes out. The other one that happens, unfortunately, is the state's rejection of a mother who is 20 years old and by law required to be the caregiver for her medical marijuana child who's been certified or recommended to use medical cannabis for her serious debilitating condition by at least 2 doctors. Jim, you know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
And as it turns out, the law is that you have to be 21 years of age or older in order to be a caregiver.
It's true.
But the law also says for any child that is a medical marijuana patient, the parent must be the caregiver, and they are responsible, parent or legal guardian, and they are responsible for the acquisition, frequency of use, and dosing. So if the law says it's got to be your parent,
But it
That
can't
leaves
be
a
your
lot of
parent.
kids out.
but it can't be your parent because they're under 21 years of age, is a child supposed to suffer? This is a legal issue we're dealing. This is another social justice issue
Shouldn't be a
that remains, and of course the ongoing battle of the caregivers that are getting decimated, at the local level. I know we're talking a little bit. We're going to return here. I know we got off track about some of the industry here, but caregivers still getting decimated as if they're the cause of all the graph earnings of the industry, commercial industry. All right, returning to Mike. A lot of people don't even realize the complications of and just the nuances of each of these cities for building codes, pulling permits, what you have to do, what you don't have to do. It's not a job for anyone. It involves a lot of there's a lawyer aspect of it, which is that you're walking into a governmental kind of situation, and there's some employee there that is going to be the gatekeeper to information and access, and it's that encounter, just being polite, whatever you got to do, schmooze them, the squeaky wheel, or what I'm saying, all these different factors about trying to get your case called, from a lawyer's perspective in court, but from your perspective, you're trying to get to the heart of the matter. There's a lot of behind the counter information that would make things a lot easier. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's definitely really true. Like what you might be hearing at first from the first person you talk to. A lot of times, to be honest with you, you kind of have to feel like you're a counselor or a therapist or something along those lines. Because, if I'm, whether it's being called in to correct a problem or it's the planning phase, a lot of times people call when they're starting to butt heads and grinding their gears a little bit. And, oftentimes some of the answers they need are right there, but they just don't want to accept it from the people who are there. So, I try to walk through, make my own assessment, talk to everybody, and then, come back and try to, offer a perspective that lets people come back to it objectively.
Sure. Let me ask you a couple of the questions. Maybe if on the growing side, because I know one of the contemplations or service that you offer is advice in the build outs and certain types of setups that may produce and whatnot. First, I'm curious if, and I know, and we've talked, so I know this, that you've been in and helped many growers' licenses get going and even participated with some of that as under their employer or whatnot. But do you have any, for someone that is interested in getting involved in a cultivation license, can you, first of all, without giving away secrets, what do you think is the best way to go about it from a grower standpoint? Just some of the techniques, the lighting, and how what kind of plant setup. Assuming you got a,
I guess as a general rule, I would start out keeping things fairly simple. When you're like going to scale for the first time, you want to eliminate as many variables as possible. And at home I do pretty much the opposite. I do living soil and compost and teas and ferments and all this stuff, and that's how I really think is the best way to do it. But when we're talking about scaling up, it's just like making cookies at home versus making a cookie factory.
What about fish guts? You ever heard about fish guts?
Fish guts are great. Yeah, I do fermented up fish amino acids, fish emulsion, and things like that.
Do you have any humans that you live with? Is it smelling? I imagine that's a downside to.
They can get stinky, but to be honest with you, if you get it fermenting the right way, it's like a little bit less of a. The microbes take care of the smell.
I got it.
Do you work in hemp?
I've helped people with hemp projects a little bit, but it's not as much my specialty. But I have helped people grow and troubleshoot when they're having some issues. On their grow facilities that would be akin to the same questions I'd get asked for cannabis too.
There's a misnomer, I think, in the desired or the marketed type of cannabis as being the best, being the highest THC. We hear this all the time. Oh, this is testing at whatever. And if our friend Jamie Lowe would say, that's. And I think we all agree, like that's not the driving force. There's so many other cannabinoids that make out the plant, that made up within the plant, that each of one individually may have a different effect on the human system, or the combination of them within the plant may have an impact. And there's so many other factors that go into that. I'm just making the point of that. The current way we're traveling seems to be all about the THC. Mm-hmm. I get that, but. Obviously, there's ways to. Are there ways to grow in a technique that produces more THC or less THC? We could even ask Rob Robar about that too. For the 0.3%.
Yeah, I mean, I really do not like the trend towards breeding strictly for high THC, and I don't think that's the best thing for people in general. From medicinal, recreational, whatever. But it's just like it's a business thing. It's a trending thing. It's people look for that high number on the menu, and I've known dispensary owners who refuse to put it on their menu, and they want people to actually ask about the effects. But breeding, if you want to get high THC, breeding, environmental conditions, proper nutrition, giving them a little bit of stress, and in fact, a little bit of stress can raise THC because it'll produce it as a protective measure. And I think that's a good technique to be using. And that's something that can be bad when you're growing hemp, because if you're stressing it, it can make hemp that would otherwise be compliant spike in THC, if I'm understanding correctly.
100%. Yeah, it's all about that early harvesting and all, and genetics have driven it a different way, meaning that you're able to get much more yield and production and different things like that out of things. But it's really still, it's still that basic way where it's still the same thing of early harvest, really.
That's what I was going to ask. Like the some of the right. There's the coloring of the the trichomes of amber or whatever whatever gold or white clear
clear to cloudy. To
but those things certainly impact the level. Like there's a proportion to the levels of THC reflected from that. Is that not true?
Yep. As he was alluding to, the THC starts The cannabinoids start further up in the chain, and over time they kind of cascade down, and at a certain point THC comes into prominence. But if you go earlier on, you'll get different ones, and he can probably explain
like with the breeding, and eventually within Michigan, hopefully, again, this is kind of a subject just a little bit off of that, but like, you know, as we move with, you know, what is a consumer really looking for? Because we honestly, I deal in the world and I sell a lot of hemp products in the dispensary markets. Here we are, and what are they all looking for? The majority of people walking in the door are either people revisiting cannabis again, or, you know, just light users. And it's not really necessarily the heavy medical users, even though we all fall into those, because I believe it's all medical. I will always believe that. It's just how people interpret it. But, you know, it's just there's so much happening with that and the breeding of what's happening in the last bunch of years, how we're able to have the CBG dominant strains, how we're starting to have, you know, the THCV strains, you know, specific strains. So there's a whole different world of kind of thing happening within the world of hemp, because it gives us that, you know, the ability to play with stuff.
Sure.
Happened,
and they haven't outlawed it yet.
It happened pretty quickly too. Seems like just 3 years ago, people were trying to breed, you know, higher CBG and harvesting super early and still getting very low yields. And I mean, the price was incredibly high.
Yeah, I think Oregon CBD, I think the one cultivar out there that I would probably say to check out.
All right. So let's, Rob, tell me this. I'm taking away from your comments that obviously the longer before the harvest takes place, the more opportunity for the THC to develop in the plant. That's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Is there, I guess we can't really, you know, because you know, the question that has come up quite a bit, and this is not legal advice, I'm just saying it's a query that comes up quite a bit. It doesn't even matter anymore because they just changed the definition of marijuana to the cannabis sativa, you know. But, you know, seed, tissue culture, clone, vegging, growing vegging, and even into some flower, there is a great likelihood that there is not more than 0.3% THC.
Oh, there won't be even close.
Right. So so like all these veg plants that they take down and have been taking down and count against the maximum that you're allowed volume-wise have never been.
Yeah,
you know,
you've been through testing.
The clone
taking samples.
Right. The clone trays. How many cases I've had where they got the clone trays? Some of these police departments figured out that they would take them into evidence that wouldn't disrupt them, and then they'd take them out 4 or 5 days later to count them, and they'd have roots in them. They'd let them continue to grow, knowing that they had at the time that was the definition of what a plant was. But it's a plant of the cannabis sativa L family that has less than 0.3%, and always, it's fascinating. I mean, it's like that is like one of the biggest screw overs. I mean, think about the number of people that have been raided for having clones. Just the federal level back in the 70s and 80s, selling clones.
All little plants.
Just little plants that don't even have this perceived dangerous, chemical in it,
Well, that's why if we were talking about THC levels and things like that, and you always hear people back in the day, and yeah, everything was much different, blah, blah, blah. Lighter or whatever, less THC. But it's like, then if you really think about like all the ditch and all the stuff like that,
that's why they made hash out of
it. I mean, it was like, here we are thinking, I can't even imagine that it's got to be hemp now.
That right. Sure. Compared to what it is now, like, right, exactly.
I mean, because honestly, you have some hemp strains
we were smoking.
They're still 0.3, but that TCHA number, until it's decarbed, is that, and it's right at the edge. I mean, it's still not going to be like over 1.
We grew up smoking hemp, didn't we?
Yeah, essentially, that's what I really think.
There's some point that, and everyone's.
That's why I love mixing it.
Not everyone's the same age, so our period that these things may have occurred, without anyone making any admissions. The era that we're talking about, that it was the dirtweed or whatever, it may be variable. So let's just use the hypothetical. If these things were really occurring, and we were actually living in a time where we were talking about cannabis being floated around and whether it's dirt weed or good weed or bad weed. And you had hypothesized, not specifically you, but just a character of yourself. Was there a time when any of the cannabis you were smoking back then, whatever we're talking about, got you high and you enjoyed it? You know, it wasn't just dirt weed that we were accepting, you know, what's the chemical they used to spray? The paraquat, you know, sprayed high that you'd get from fucking dirt weed versus some, you know, good Thai or
Some
Acapulco Gold or some monkey paw. I mean, these are some old school strains, right? Like, what was the other ones?
Red, what was the thing called? Maui Wowie.
Maui Wowie. I mean, meanwhile, there was still
Red.
multiple strains, right? It's just there was just fitted those 4 categories, right? That was it. It was like just like that's like the
Branding, man. It's
brandy. There's like the selling of the sativa indica thing that some people still, you know,
That's where all branding started, honestly, was a lot of that whole thing of in the jazz era.
Sinsemilla.
Yeah, you know, it just saying that's what it was. He had the best, you know. That's where you go. That's the idea of it.
But I maintain this. I think that everyone who's ever ingested cannabis, you know, at the stages where it wasn't regularly around, you know, had at some moment a more significant experience than other times. You know what I mean? Like maybe it's been the first time, could have been the 10th time, could have been, you know, years later or whatever. But where there's a unique chemical reaction to that particular cannabis in your endocannabinoid system in that moment that you say to yourself, like, yeah, like this is good cannabis, and you know it's like good everything, you know.
You knew the difference between the brick and the, you know, what became beasters, what became, you know, all that. You know, the BC bud that started to come over from Canada.
BC bud, that's right. All that hydro, that was a thing. I agree. You're getting it.
First part of all that, when you first got Chem Dog back in the day, or you know, way early on, because I'm a deadhead. So when that first showed up around, you were, you know, G13 back when that first popped.
Right, Apollo.
You know,
Northern Lights. Let's just throw
12%.
Northern,
you know?
Yeah.
But right now, I'm, you know, kind of circle back on like what people are coming in dispensaries looking for, because I do go in a lot of them because I love to do it. Is just, you know, you talk to them and what are they buying? The average person walking in is not looking to get ripped off the get, because it's like their first time doing it again, and so they really just want a nice, pleasant experience. And I think brands and people who like that, who can focus on that, you know, businesses, dispensaries, whatever, will really benefit in the end. That's just my little take on it. Because there is a good movement of people who still believe in, you know, all this is going on of wanting to have a good customer experience and just present it in a way that is like, you know, why are you doing these things? You know, like, it's not all about that, you know, but.
Sure. I mean, but it's the, you know, it's a question that anyone in commerce and the economy asks themselves about the, you know, end purchase. Why do they go there versus that place? What's the draw there? What is that? You know, is it just an experience? Is it the product? Is it cleaner? Yeah, people nicer. You know, that those are factors that go into the retail business. You know, and doesn't matter if it's a gas station or, you know, a deli. You know, it's retail. You got to, you know, get the people in, and if they don't, they're going to go someplace else. But it's true. It's true. But it's interesting. Do you think that, I mean, your perspective here, and I don't have anything to data to dispute, but Mike, maybe you've got some ideas about this. But who are the people that are going into the dispensaries, buying and purchasing? I mean, if you've got $110 million every month in sales, first of all, I wonder in what other economy that amount of money is transferred every month. Maybe gas, the gasoline company, right? That'd be one industry that probably finds itself. The rent, you know, people probably pay that in rent. Landlords collect it. But, you know, it's a significant chunk of for a month. Do you think so, Jeff?
Who are the people that are buying legally as opposed to buying the same way they've been buying before?
Yeah, I'm saying if the numbers that are being produced by the state are 110 million every month, and now it's 80% of that is recreational. Okay, that means that it could be some of those people aren't have their cards anymore, and that's become. But first of all, 110 million a month in any industry is a big number, and people only have so much money, so much disposable income, and of all the places where that 110 million from that disposable income it could go, it's going there. You know what I mean? So my guess. First of all, do we acknowledge that that's a big number, a significant number for economic purposes of buying and stabilizing power that can drive an economy? Of course it is, right?
Sure it is, of course.
All right, because you're talking billion for the year, right? At least.
Absolutely, 3.5 billion, wasn't it?
Rob says that the people that are going in there are people returning for, like non-frequent users and people maybe
30, 40,
coming back to use. Older generation
Older
people.
generation is really more the thing of the disposable income.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not
Yeah, that
necessarily
hits on two things.
disposable. But
Right.
I just think it's one of those things that it's they're not struggling as much. But then the people on the lower end buying, I don't know who's buying the $65 ounces. I mean, not $65 eights. I just
Right.
don't. You know what I mean? It's like it's obviously people are buying them, but
It's interesting because I do think there's some statistic somewhere recently was the use in teenagers after legalization remained the same, use in college students remained the same,
Use
pretty
in
much across the board,
folks.
and 65 and over is like up 300%.
Right.
That was driven a lot by the medical because they were all stuck on opioid medications, then constipation medications for their opioid medications. They said, "Fuck it, I got to get some cannabis."
Well, and the stigma of illegality.
Yeah, and then the stigma of illegality, right?
100%.
Like they'd be
That's
happy.
why you have so many people with I think that's why the recreational market opens up to so many different people who would not get a card before,
Right.
because they're not required to go get one and sign up on whatever list that they're worried about.
I mean, listen. Just on a side note,
Rightfully so.
on a side note, that
and the
issue,
CPL thing.
right?
Yeah, no, that might be honestly the biggest thing, in my opinion, why people don't get cards.
CPS.
CPL licenses.
Oh,
What,
right.
the
They're concerned
concealed
about whether or not being able to
license.
have a
Right.
Their guns.
Better to just,
There's
it's
so many
Freestyle.
veterans.
freestyle, right? Right.
So many veterans who
Sure.
are part of the NRA, part of the different things, and it's sad because they're benefiting from it right now.
Commendo.
I mean, it's
You have to give up a lot.
But luckily, like you said, we can separate. It's all medicinal, right? So with education, they still have access through the
Oh,
rec
and
market.
I really do think that's what's really leading a lot of the different things that people are. I've been sponsoring these events at Local Roots up in Langsburg, Michigan. It's a little town. It's literally just this tiny little town, and I love it because it's a family thing. That you go to this little concert thing. It's just the people who are there are older, and it's just as you watch them walk in the doors, they're a recreational place. If you have a card, you get a discount, but it's just it's one of those things that's who is coming in there. It's
Pink
really
Floyd
beautiful.
fans.
That's right.
It's a beautiful thing.
Should come to
Really.
Canna Jam.
Yeah, for sure.
Tap into that
I'm sure they're going to
demographic.
make their way down there.
Yeah.
The hippies were right,
They were. We got to take a break.
Oh, take a quick break.
Yeah.
All right, hang tight. We'll be right back.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
Join the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org. The MMMA is focused on the well-being and safety of medical marijuana patients. The MMMA site provides the most comprehensive and up-to-date news on legal issues, politics, research, cultivation, as well as the various strange products and methods of cannabis use. Come join the discussion with the most knowledgeable and passionate advocates in Michigan today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org.
Hello, this is John D. Lamb from Planet Green Trees TV. Congratulations, Hash Bash, on your 50th annual. This goes out to all your dads out there who ever got in trouble for smoking pot. Your smile is legal now, don't frown. Show some teeth, don't look so down. Hold your head up high, have a ball. You weren't so bad after all. Your smile is illegal now, don't cry. Let me be that twinkle in your eye. You paid the price, took a fall, but you weren't so bad after all. Busted in your high school parking lot, busted in your college dorm. Then you trusted a narc and you got popped on the day your son was born. Misdemeanors, felonies and fines, paranoia, probation times. They watching you pee in the lavatory, a gallon of clean tea. Naturally, you had a record the year you had me. Your smile is legal now, so get high. Might do you some good, give it a try. Your smile is legal, wake and bake. Your smile is legal, have some cake. Happy birthday, Dad, I just had to call. You weren't so bad after all.
Double shift in the heart of the city. Sun's going down, I'm about to get ready to close my eyes, get some rest and dream of a life that's better than this. Pull the shades close and turn off the light, climb into bed and the rest of my life fades away oh so fast. The next thing you know I'm gone in a flash. A big blue world that was full of fire, I was soaring through the air in my radio flyer. That's when I saw you standing in the sunlight. Yeah, the fire in your eyes was so surreal. Somehow I thought it could all be real, wishing that this moment in my life would last forever. Every night I dream so we'd be together. My alarm went off and the sun came up, and I was back to work and just my luck. Breaking my back just to stay afloat. I can't stay awake, I need an antidote to keep my fears and my blues away. Well, it's getting heavy at the end of the day. I bust out the door, down the road. Yeah, to finish what I started, no we're telling where it might go. Out of a big blue world that was full of fire, I was soaring through the air in my radio flyer. That's when I saw you standing in the sunlight. Yeah, the fire in your eyes was so surreal. Wishing that this moment in my life will last forever. And every night I dream so we could be together. And every night I dream so we could be together. Too long, though my feelings now for you are strong. You take my hand, all we leave the ground, we're flying. Through a big blue world that was full of fire, I was soaring through the air in my radio flyer. That's when I saw you standing in the sunlight. Yeah, the fire in your eyes was so surreal. Somehow I thought it could all be real. Wishing that this moment in my life would last forever. Oh, and every night I dream so we could be together. Yeah, and every night I dream so we could be together. Yes, I do. Oh, I dream of you. Us together.
Here's Michael Komorn with more Planet Green Trees.
All right, how are we doing out there? You know, we're live on Facebook, YouTube, and other podcast sources. There is a bunch of topics we can talk about here, and I think Amanda should lead the way. Which one, Amanda, you've been quiet tonight. I feel bad that you haven't been able to jump in. I may be talking too much, or...
No, actually, I had somebody have a question in
Oh,
regards
perfect.
to the
I was going to
terpenes.
say, please, let's get some questions. Yes.
Yeah, so we this can go to Rob and Mike as well, but one of the listeners was interested, actually Danielle that was on the show before, she said she's interested in what your thoughts were about the availability or lack thereof of the terpene and other cannabinoid info for patients when they go into like dispensaries and things like that. And then
yeah, no, I think it's growing. We were talking a little bit of it on and off thing, but you know, it's there is a definite people of wanting to know, but only not every place is presenting that information. It's not required, as far as I know, that I've not seen it, that it's required by the state to present that information. So because of packaging and a lot of those different things enter in, a lot of that information does get left off, I think. Other states, though, it's required for them to present that information. You know, when I'm in Las Vegas or things like that, you buy a concentrate there, right across it is listed all the terpene information on it. Colorado is the same way. So I do see it here. I do see certain places doing a really good job at presenting that information. There are brands and shops doing it.
But it's not it's not in the forefront. It's not required. And it's not.
It's not required, so a lot of people won't do it.
And right. And I guess in Ohio. I mean, I'm assuming Ohio does not. And I guess the question comes back to, how can you have any of these conversations about cannabinoids and THC and what's medicine or not if you're not considering terpenes and flavonoids or whatever. What was the other one? Terpenes and what was the question about?
The cannabinoids and the terpenes.
Okay, there you go. So we talked about the cannabinoids, but the terpenes are a major piece of the kit. Someone describe for the jury what terpenes means.
Maybe, yeah.
I can make a stab at it, but I'm a lawyer. Someone else go.
I would just say in essence, but I don't know. I mean, I don't have the right lingo. Rob or Mike, maybe you guys have a better idea of what.
Oh, I mean, there's definitely people who can explain it better than me, but they're hydrocarbons, and a lot of them have particular odors and effects associated with them. So you might smell one particular terpene like limonene, and clearly you've smelled that in lemon before, or myrcene, and might give you some mango kind of smells. But they're also known to have their own particular effects, and then effects altogether, and then effects in combination with different cannabinoids. Right, Rob?
Yeah, no, it's the whole thing about the full spectrum. The whole idea of or ensemble. A couple of different ways that people talk about it. Is that it's really all of it. It's all the different things. Now we've been able to identify the different cannabinoids now better, I feel, which is very important. Because now we're understanding that, CBG does more for these types of effects, that we understand more that, CBN is more nighttime-ish. When we kind of always knew that because you follow the progression of the plant growth. It starts, mother of cannabinoids is CBG, is what they say. So it, leads to the others, essentially.
And it seems like I'm not sure in regards to stability of strains, but it's pretty hard to get the same profile each time, I'm guessing, from batch to batch. I don't know. But sometimes even the strain itself just, they stop growing it or whatever. I don't know what this licensed market or, what the typical thing is. But that's been an issue in the past for patients to get the same type of marijuana. And so sometimes in knowing those terpene profiles, that would be helpful for whatever it is they're going through, stomach issues, or they need some sleep, whatever it happens to be, and follow in the nose.
I think maybe somewhat people stop paying attention to Leafy a little bit, like that particular app, and kind of being more into researching that a little bit. I tell people all the time, just download that app and just kind of look at it a bit. It might not be perfect, and it's a lot of it user submitted information, but then it's, at least you have some kind of guidance of something that somebody's talked about, a strain doing something for them particularly. Because I think that's important, really, because I have particular ones that I'll always try to keep around, and when I can find them, I can. But yeah, you're right, because it's, it's more limited. It's everything is based on a run, basically.
Yeah.
I wish all businesses would do that, but like with so many things, you can't really expect businesses to do something just to be good people. There are some really great businesses that want to do things like that, but I think like consumers should ask for that. If it's important to you, go to your dispensary and tell them, please, who grew this, how did they grow it? Can we see the full test results instead of just the THC? And, some of them will definitely listen and maybe appreciate it. And they just didn't know that people wanted to know that.
Oh, yeah. And then a lot of it's just consumer. And then is everybody in the consumer market looking for that? I'm no expert on any of that, to be honest with you. But then it's like, what is the general market looking for? And unfortunately, I always say this, people love mids. The average consumer just wants cannabis. Good, consistent, clean cannabis. The average consumer. I'm just saying.
No, you're definitely right. It's like 5% of the people or so, that like unfortunately currently that's what I believe. It's a pretty low amount, but I shouldn't say unfortunately because I guess everyone enjoys it in their own ways.
No, that's what I mean. We can't be snobs on it. That's the thing.
Yeah, right. But I do.
We love good weed. I do.
I'm afraid of what we're going to lose, though. Through commercialization.
That's why we have to keep doing what we're doing.
That's true. There's going to be, just like people maintaining heirloom tomatoes, like that their grandma gave them seeds of, there's going to be people who keep the heirloom cannabis
That's why the
strains.
caregiver thing is important. That's why all that is important. That's why, all of it is, because we need to keep those things going.
Well,
The conversation of that.
I wanted to add my 2 cents about the terpenes. I understood that terpenes, they're naturally being in our natural environment. In other words,
Lots of plants.
And the terpenes that we're talking about don't just occur in cannabis. Like they're found in what may be described as smell or taste is what they're attributable to.
Botanical terpenes and other botanical.
And I would say, for example, I've always understood it to be that there's a general 4 flavors or categories. For example, there's a citrus, fruity kind of, and all those go into that category of terpene style. Maybe not, different terpenes, but like the flavoring and smell and taste that there's a more of a piney taste, which is different than citrus.
All of aromatherapy.
All of aromatherapy, the oils and lotions, right? Then there's a
gassy.
Well, gassy, of course, diesel gassy, which is
earthy.
And then there's like I think it's an earthy would be the other one, which is more of a, I'm just for the 4 general categories. And I've always, maybe incorrectly, but like how would you identify that if you didn't know what earthy meant from a taste and smell perspective, or what citrus meant, or fruity from a taste and smell perspective? So it's like something that we can identify with, what impact it has on the other cannabinoids in there for the experience that they were describing. And I do want to point out, Rob, it was interesting your use of the word ensemble, because I know that that is a word that evolved from entourage effect by the late and great Lester Grimspoon of Harvard Medical School, who wrote the Marijuana Revisited in 1974 and was one of the foremost outspoken advocates from a scientific perspective of the benefits of medical cannabis. Of course, his son died of, I think, Hopkins lymphoma, and tells the story of his kid, going through therapy and vomiting, and just the ability of them to have a few moments of, some non-sick, dying moments. He was forever grateful. Anyways, but the terms that we're using here involving the whole plant was his argument. He used the term entourage effect, that you needed the whole entirety of the plant. Then he changed it to the ensemble. I thought I don't know, semantics. But that was always the argument why Marinol or dronabinol would not work. The synthetic molecule that's created from non-cannabis plants, beakers and heat and moss and whatever, fungi. They can get pure THC, whatever their formula is, to get it there, and it just never worked from a pain treatment perspective in all of its glory.
Binded wrong. This is what led to K2, and you know what I mean?
Yep.
That whole same basic process.
Sure. And but it makes the strongest argument, and especially for medical purposes. It's interesting because they acknowledged, and some pharmaceutical company went out and developed the formula, figured out how to create synthetic THC. I don't know if it was hard to do or not, but they created the patent for it and own it from a licensing standpoint, and are the only ones making dronabinol and are allowed to do that, or Marinol, which is pure THC, pharmaceutical THC, and they obviously went through all the steps and process. They were able to advocate to the DEA that this terrible drug, this THC that just is so dangerous, can be actually synthesized. We have to grow the plants, but it's the same thing. As dangerous as we're calling it, Schedule I as we're calling it. We can do scripts that doctors will allow it, and this is what we got for you. So it was like obviously part of the contribution, I would say, to the medical cannabis, which kicked down the door for the recreational, but it didn't work. Like, there's still complaints, and doctors realized that, and from that was the emergence of this concept of the entourage effect, or the ensemble effect, or whole plant medicine. And it's an interesting dynamic because I think it's fair to say that a future regarding medical marijuana is not going to involve, no matter how sophisticated it gets, how more research is, quote unquote, research is done. Not that there isn't a lot of research being done now, but just but when whatever it is and wherever that takes us, it's highly unlikely that we will be purchasing at any time plant material from a dispensary. Anyone disagree with that? You know what I'm saying? Like, just talking about metal right now. You go into from a pharmacy, I should say. Pharmacy. I really misspoke there. Nobody will be buying medical marijuana from a pharmacy. It's not going to happen. Even if the federal government, embraces whatever. I mean, not that they haven't already, but if there's some kind of...
I think it's beyond that already, even if the federal government...
We're beyond. Now, Amanda, we know our friend Danielle in Ohio kind of tries to mirror that idea of, is it a pharmacist that I forgot how they do it now.
The program is set up a little different over there in the way that they have pharmacists that are available for patients on site. That was in one of the drafts of their law, and that. So the bud tenders have the extensive training and they give the general consultation, but also further, if somebody had additional questions, they could sit down with like a pharmacist. So Kelsey and Danielle both worked. They were both on the show. Danielle was one of the consultants or the bud tenders, and then then Kelsey was a pharmacist that was contracted to work at the dispensary.
That's what I'm saying. There's a pharmacist there.
Right.
Now,
yes.
The point I was trying to make, I mean, that's Michigan's answer to that was your caregiver will tell you and help you with your dosing and your frequency of use, which many people felt that way. It was more of a trial and error experience for some of the caregivers that were really into treating serious, conditions and whatnot. But I guess and I know Ohio's is unique, and the involvement of the pharmacist I think is fascinating, and for some reason, it almost seems as if it's done out of fear of a federal raid or something. Like our program's got, we got pharmacists or whatever. But I think it's
interesting. Sorry, I don't mean to.
Go ahead.
No, it's interesting that there are a few. Kind of, we're talking about are people looking to do this within their places. I'll name drop Hyatt. The fact that they have, Kathleen Graham, who's, RN, BSN, the whole thing on staff. So there are people out there trying to do something with that mentality of having, the staff. But how it works, I don't know, honestly.
You're saying some of the dispensaries that throughout the state are much more patient oriented and.
Oh yeah, there is a bunch of them that are super solid. Those are obviously, ones I'll always be super.
No, and people that come into our office that we advise in which direction to go and what kind of license, I feel obligated to tell them that the distribution or the breakdown of the sales is now, like 80, 20, 70, 30 recreational and medical, because there's fewer patients renewing. They can still get a dispensary. However, there will always be a market for, medical products that are, whether it's for method of ingestion, there's all variables that can take place, but there will always be a need for that, I think, and I still think there's a huge market that can still grow there, and because as as people get older, we have a greater population of older people that are going to be in the market that, it's going to be more of their as disposable income, et cetera. So I think, and I say to that, I say that's a reality of the market, but I don't, under no circumstances are the patients going to go away,
Yeah. They might not have a card, what I'm saying? But they will still always be, again, a lot of people walking into a lot of recreational places are just visiting again, And I use that term just because it's just, we're all multi-year users.
I understand. I mean, it could be a lot of patients who, instead of renewing their card, they just decided to pay the recreational price.
Yeah, because maybe they don't consume that much, where it's smaller purchases, where they really do only buy, an eighth at a time or a quarter at a time,
Yeah,
versus.
I think you see a combination of things coming from like the doctor's office. First, I want to make a correction. The pharmaceutical or the pharmacist was at the Rise stores statewide over there in Ohio, but there was a combination of things going on. First, COVID hit, so as soon as rec hit, the drop started with people renewing their cards and things like that as soon as the dispensaries were able to supply that. And then, of course, COVID hit and nobody had the money to do anything, and except for purchase cannabis. And they could do that. The dispensaries did well, obviously, during that time. But the difference was, do they want to get their card or do they want to get more cannabis? So it was interesting how that played out, but that definitely went into it. And so we always try to provide people with information as far as like how to use it and what to do with it, especially if they're new users, because depending on where they go, they may or may not get that additional support.
Right, I agree. If there should be a easy, friendly, empathetic, genuine, trustworthy, person that can, make it easy to transition if they wanted to try to engage in cannabis use, if they haven't before or whatever. And I don't think it needs to be.
Everybody wants to ask.
What's that?
They do. Everybody wants to ask. I mean, it really do. When they come in, I mean, you go into a dispensary, you watch. A lot of people come in, they just quick buy, go. They know what they want, they know what they're buying. But you see lots of people who come in too, who are, wanting to talk more about the different things, which edibles, which, the one thing that I think is interesting, because as my company moves into the cannabis, the regulated THC market side of things, the focus is never really going to be on high THC. It'll always be ratio products. It'll always be, as I say, what we're doing on this side, but not worry about being hot. That's my goal.
Sure.
Because I really do feel that people are already looking for this. You're already, why? I saw one time there was a little article about, why would a dispensary sell CBD? Because you can buy it at CVS. Because some places you can't. And the real truth of it is that people don't want to buy it there.
Right.
They start to think of dispensaries as being those sources or, provisioning centers as being the source of all cannabinoids to them. And that's what is happening. I mean, I do see that down the road.
I agree. I mean, it's
just becomes just like, why would you go to some place to buy this? It's a specialty thing.
So you like you like the CBD products and the Delta 8 and Delta 10 being brought into the regulated market? Do you think in the long run it'll be?
I hope somebody does something with it, and I hope my company can do something with it within the regulated market, if that's what it is, because people have found really good success in treating a lot of different ailments with Delta 8. I really can't speak too much on Delta 10 as a whole, or THCO or acetate, those types of things, because I haven't experienced them myself.
Well, I'm saying to you, I was thinking about the way you said it. I think from just a completely objective perspective, or what I try to maintain as an objective perspective, you've got the hemp and CBD market, which until recently was virtually unregulated. It's arguably unregulated from the federal government. And so long as, we're talking about the same plant and just a little bit different and harvesting earlier, blah, blah, whatever it is. And all these remarkable things have been able to be done with it. Unlimited plant growing, right? I mean, you get a license. It doesn't say 1,500 plants. It says grow hemp as much as you want. Go for it. And, we put on a lot of seminars, and there was a lot of attention here, and there was a lot of anticipation with the hemp industry, and awaiting the threat of the federal government to produce some administrative rules and to create a licensing process that cleared the way, and that at some point they threatened that, if once the feds created it, then the states could create their own. But if they didn't create one, you could apply to the feds and use that one. All these but it hasn't really evolved like that. And instead, what we had was a completely unregulated market. And because of the unregulated market, you had all kinds of products. Who knows where they were coming from? I mean, my favorite joke is the PGA of America, Professional Golfing Association, had their own CBD lotion or something. Like, what is that? How did they get to? It's a brand, Who knows where they got it from? And just a thing, Yeah, and but I'm just saying, so. I mean, it's one of those
situations. Pat Robertson sold CBD.
Who did? Pat Robertson?
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
No,
seriously.
You could buy. One of my early customers sent me a message one time, and she goes, "I really want to try your oil because it's just so much, the cost." And I go, "What have you been using?" And she mentioned, and she was an older lady, and she said, that she had bought CBD oil from Pat Robertson, and it was literally, the same type of thing, and it was three 15 ml bottles that were no more than maybe 200 milligrams each bottle, maybe. And it was $260 or something like that. It was this is a lot of years ago, but it was just, it was crazy because here he is pitching it,
Yeah, no kidding. He needs another,
because his son had found benefit, and that's great. I'm glad that his son, if that's what happened, that it helped him, but it's just wow. But that's what's out there. It goes. So
I think I've heard him advocate for, cannabis legalization. I think he's got a couple sound bites where he's like, you know what I mean? That gets played out like
for him. It's he's it's just time.
Yeah.
It's just come on.
He's puffing on the sweet hemp.
But my point is, Rob, that this, we in Michigan regarding cannabis are living in a highly regulated industry. It's so highly regulated that the townships and cities are controlling everything. They're controlling, arguably, the black market, whatever, because every time they say no, the people are still going to get their cannabis. They're not going to go, no tax dollars. That there's still this rejection of it from, we're a long ways away from it being license freely granted, property becoming available, the market price for entry.
Sure.
As a licensee, there's I don't know, maybe there's someplace micro businesses haven't happened yet. We're several steps away from that.
Consumption lounge thing.
And even though the eligibility for these rec licenses is 100 plant or even a 500 plant, and or is more doable, and purportedly from the MRA's position, the ticket or invitation to come out of the basement into a license grow, the 100 plant grow, there's no opportunities for it. It's still expensive, and you still got the building conversion thing. And Mike will tell you, to do it right, it's a barrier. Not having money to fix up a building to grow marijuana that you're great at growing it is a barrier. I mean, I'm not complaining because it's a business and you need capital and whatnot, but
dollar bill.
Yeah. But
it's just a reality that needs to be considered if one is in moving in that direction. It's going to be costly.
Right, but all of that is also driven by, and whatever expense we're talking about, where these numbers are, is driven by the lack of inventory. If there was more inventory, maybe that's not true. If there was more buildings that were available and more people getting licenses and more construction job opportunities, it would probably reduce the price, just generally speaking. You know what I'm saying? Because the scores on the property are all high-end, amounts per, whereas the busier people are.
And then as time goes on and as the market gets a little bit tighter, it would definitely be easier to find, deals on getting in. I'd prefer it be regulatory changes that make it easier for the smaller guy to get in, I guess.
I know. I guess I'm getting at, does it matter if, from a construction, because one of the factors, if anyone doesn't know this, if you're going to be there's a whole phase 2 after you get pre-qualified, which involves whatever facility you're in has to be approved, and whatever building you purchase needs to be substantiated to some level of health and safety before you were ever going to get it approved for the state.
Yep. And just true for opening just a lot of small businesses with
Any
brick and
small
mortar
business.
where you want certificate of occupancy and
Right.
you're rehabbing it. I wish when things open up a little bit more, maybe some benefits could come from federal grants for rehabbing, like brown zones and properties that haven't been used for a really long time.
Right, but I gotta figure that, and I'm just thinking out loud because like if it was, I mean, there's properties that exist that are in green zones, in the cannabis zone, and they've been sitting there prior to being in that zone for 50 years. Nobody gave a crap about it, right?
Yep.
But now there's the opportunity for it. Now the price has doubled and tripled and quadrupled, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the purchaser of it's got to come and have some real money, and the the build outs and whatever. It's a business, so there's meaningful and there's costs and whatever that formula is that is meaningful for the construction. I'm just wondering if I mean, and granted, it's bringing specialists in for that very reason, which of course you're going to pay for more as well. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not, that's how it should be.
Michael,
Yeah.
In certain areas, like sometimes the cities, if they know and they want the money for the inspections and all of that kind of stuff, they just go down their wish list. This is what we'd like to see. That.
Sure.
We'll come back. You can bill us for another visit out here. We'll look at it. All these types of things. So some of them might even, they of course they welcome the buildings being rehabbed and stuff, but they also welcome the massive amounts of inspections that they can do.
Yeah, but there's a formula to the number of licenses that the city gives out to the amount of revenue that has been returned. I think it's 40,000, something like that. Jim, is it like 40, 50,000?
Yeah, I mean,
maybe it's 60,000 for every light. That's what the turnover was.
It depends. I believe it's variable, but yeah, it's a proportionate amount across.
But
they get a set amount for each retail license that they've given out. I can't remember what that is.
I don't know if it's just retail. I think there's something associated with each of the licenses that's somehow distributed across. There's got to be an incentive for each of the licenses. You know what I mean?
Some places have been a little bit more responsible with that. It seems like, there's, and I think Bay City's given out 40 some odd retail licenses. It's ridiculous.
There was a published list that was, I think it was fiscal year 2020 must have been, that showed what the return to each of the cities and municipalities that had provided licensing. And whatever like Ann Arbor, it stands out in my mind. I remember their number was $460,000 they received for that fiscal year, which they used, interestingly, for the budget of the courts that they didn't have money for, because the broken system that Jeff was talking about, we always talk about, is that the courts don't have enough money to pay the bills, and they need defendants to be brought in and arrested for marijuana to get money from them to pay the bills. This is a report published by the state of Michigan exclaiming that our district court systems are broken for that very reason. But, I mean, it was interesting. Ann Arbor put it where it needed to be put because they're, and I'm fine with that as far as I'm concerned. You want to put it to the courts to run the court system? I'd rather it be from sales tax from marijuana than from the out of the pocket of the marijuana purchaser or caregiver or whatever. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But that's a dynamic, I think. But I'm just, listen, a lot of these deals with the marijuana business that involve a property piece too. And I'm getting at, there's so many buildings that, and Michigan's unique in that way. Let's be honest. There's a lot of towns that no one has even thought about kicking the tire of that town in years. You got all this, it was a thriving, Saginaw's one that was a thriving, community, Flint, Motor City communities that did, not just cars, but parts, and employed a lot of people, a lot of homes, a lot of, middle class. Schools are good. All this stuff all built up around this industry that obviously the business went away. The people's houses are still there. The buildings still exist.
A really good example of that, I like to refer to Chesaning, Michigan. It's a smaller town. It's in South Saginaw County, and they about 3,000 people or so, I believe, live there. And there's a factory for about, I think close to 100 years, and it employed hundreds of people. And it was actually a retired Detroit Tiger, bought the business and just wasted it away, unfortunately. And
Denny McClain?
yeah,
he went to jail, I think, didn't he?
he should.
He went to jail over that. He stole. He's been to jail a few times. He's been.
No.
What about Denny McClain? No, he wasn't. He's a righty. But yeah, I know this. So I didn't know that was his. That was the business. It was like he stole all the money from the employee fund.
Yeah, he did, and gambled it away. And overnight, they lost like 20% of the people living there. Lost their jobs, and it was a really hard hit to the town. And it's a really great community. Anyway, they were one of the earlier adopters and supporters of people who were allowing these businesses into their community. And I don't know exactly how many licenses are there, but more than a half dozen. And there's been well over, I believe, 200 jobs created. And it's still just, the nicest community. There's been nothing bad has happened there, and people should look at that as an example.
We had on Sheriff Fetterspiel, Jim. Remember those days?
I sure do.
He's the sheriff of Saginaw County, and at one point was perceived as a real antagonist regarding the.
Yeah, there were some protests.
Protests with him, and. He drove a car that said, "I took this from a drug dealer." Like he had a forfeited car that said, "I took this from a drug dealer." On the back of his car, and he had this.
He came around though.
He came around. We had him on the show, and he lightened his tone and narrative, and believes in the medical marijuana. And he was here talking about. There's a couple other wherever it was in Saginaw. I said, he was talking about like some nice mom and pop people, redid a building, whatever. But, so this is a phenomenon in Michigan, which I think is obviously, but we do need, I wonder if there may be a time, Jim, what do you think? Do you think there'll be a time when cities start, because cities and private companies can partner up, private individuals can partner up for certain projects, right?
Sure.
City could half finance the building and the fixing up of, right?
Anything's possible. I think that there was actually some talk in Detroit of a program like that through the land bank.
I was talking about that.
Yeah, maybe we're talking about that. Sure. But I don't believe it's come to fruition. But I think it's just like any other business, and we'll get there eventually.
Well, there are, like I mentioned, local roots before. They had gotten stuff from their town for a curbside thing. A bunch of money to just fix it up and make it look nice. Mm-hmm. And that was pretty amazing in my opinion, really. That's a city kicked down that just because of it's a spot right downtown. Again, just that beautiful little downtown vibe.
Rob, first of all, we're gonna have to wrap it up soon here, and I will thank everyone. But I want to ask you this, Rob. I know you're opining on kind of the marketplace from the purchase standpoint, and and you get your finger on the pulse kind of the from the commercial, and that you're doing because you're marketing and that's your thing, that's what you're doing, so it's imperative. It's like reading new cases that come out, and being aware of what if the laws change or whatever. But you heard me describe earlier the event. Knowing what you talked about and what you think the commercial market here is, and trust me, I know that there's a lot of other events that are going on that, there's no tax, no one's getting taxes, no licensing fees, there's no $500 to have the enforcement team at your event, making sure you're accountable for compliance and the responsible one to remove anyone that's not. Yes, that's what some of the rules say. But what do you think? What do you think it's going to take to get 5,000 people there?
Well, probably some good advertising.
Will you talk to Fish? Do you think if we got Fish there, they would?
Yeah, well, I think actually any bands, anything that in your first inaugural year, I think a lot of it would be, just getting the word out there and growing, because just like the first festival that was just in Niles, really, an actual true consumption event.
Were you there?
I wasn't able to go because I've been kind of getting ready to go on this trip, and we've been launching these other products and stuff, and so kind of doing a lot of different things.
I did not hear much about that from promotional standpoint beforehand, but I know it was, it was like a Indiana border draw. That's what I understood. You know what I mean?
Yeah, anybody along that border is always going to pull that. But yeah, it was, I think anytime you're trying to do that and trying to roll it out, you got to kind of start small and
what was your?
go hard.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And I will share with you that in the world of marijuana event organizer, just talk, you're always preparing for the next event. I mean, it's like that's how they talk. You know what I mean? Don't overdo.
I think all events too, like concerts and whatever.
Right. You're always right. So, and you're going to learn, whatever. But I guess my question is, what was your impressions of the Niles success in terms of, I don't know.
Well, again, anytime it's happening and you have another place that you can have,
sure,
A, consumption, B, just enjoying and hanging out with people,
sure,
enjoying the plant and music, whatever you got going on. I do think the angle of throwing in the comedy side of things and things like that can definitely help, because I happen to know some pretty good friends who have in the comedy world too.
Were you just there in Niles?
They love that kind of stuff. It's
he didn't go to Niles. By the way, we are looking for some other. We're looking for some other acts if they're interested in coming on and doing some comedy. I think we're going to have potentially the Darren McCarty. He's got some comedy gig and whatnot. But yeah, if you've got we're booking acts and stuff. The
for sure.
Entertainment. But I don't know if you heard at the beginning. Yeah, there's a formula for events. If you've got a headlining band, they will sell the tickets. They will make people show up if you get the right music. And the comedy thing is a different thing, and I do think that there's a need for that. They go hand in hand. But I've kind of been sarcastic about the selection of the Pink Floyd cover band as being cliche, but I think we're allowed to be that way. First event, and I thought that. I don't know these guys. I don't know if anyone, we'll post some links and stuff as we formally start sending some stuff out. But they're like Pink Floyd.
Yeah, so they're pretty good too. You think they'll play Run Like Hell? Yeah, that'd be a good one.
I think they're going to play. Maybe one of the things we'll do is we'll make a
playlist.
We'll get a audience playlist. Yeah. We can vote on the songs. We have some different options as we get closer to the event.
There's lots of good regional bands, that are, regional / national type touring bands that are from Michigan that, really are good outlets, to help bring people in from different types of, scenes.
Sure.
If you will, because they all share the same kind of things, You go, even oddly enough, the world of Juggaloos, they still consume cannabis. It's not maybe your hippie thing, but there's a whole world of I had a conversation recently about it, because I'm a fish head, because there's this, they're not same worlds, but that's how you bring in more and more people. And
sure.
Sure. It obviously there's certain things that vulgarity wise that may happen that you probably have to watch out with certain acts.
You mean the Juggalos?
Not just Juggalos in general, but certain musical acts.
Well, what about if we had like a Fish cover band? Would you be okay with that?
Oh yeah, there's lots. There's some good guys out there. There's lots of good guys.
I'm kidding.
Pull some Dark Star Orchestra or something like that if you want the Deadheads there.
I thought about that. That would be another one if we had like a dead cover band or something like that.
There's a lot of really good connections, and I think actually it's kind of ironic that we probably have a lot of mutual friends that probably can hook us up with those same people.
All right, good. We'll have to revisit that. All right, Jimmy's wagging the finger. He's just calling it. It's been fun. We haven't done this in a while. Have everyone had fun? Yeah, that's what I do when I get the kids off the baseball field for the Little League. I get them over in our huddle and I say, "Did everybody have fun tonight? Everyone have fun today? Because baseball for kids, it's a fucking kids game.
It is.
If you're not having fun,
why are you doing?
But did everyone have fun tonight in Little League practice right here? Everyone?
Yeah.
Had a great time.
All right, get your hands in on three. Great Cubs. 1, 2, 3. Great Cubs. Just kidding. That's our Little League fucking chant and stuff. All right, great. Let's not spoil this with the reference to Denny McClain, who at the time was a 31-game winner in 1967. Won the Cy Young Award. 31 games in one season.
Yeah.
Won. If anyone knows baseball,
Yeah, and still turned out to be an asshole.
It was one of the more remarkable baseball, and it's I don't think it's ever been come close to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like now the modern day pitcher is not that and stuff, but yeah, he turned out to be a bad guy. A lot of felony convictions, and I think he went to prison twice. He did the same thing someplace else also. I feel like he ripped off a union, employee benefits or something. I don't know. I don't want to misspeak and slander him, but it was not good. Did not bode well for him. All right, listen. Baseball, good. Danny McClain, bad. Planet Green Tree is good. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And I guess we'll be back next week, going back at it again.
Shut it down, Tommy.
Shut it down.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
Join the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association today, michiganmedicalmarijuana.org. The MMMA is focused on the well-being and safety of medical marijuana patients. The MMMA site provides the most comprehensive and up-to-date news on legal issues, politics, research, cultivation, as well as the various strange products and methods of cannabis use. Come join the discussion with the most knowledgeable and passionate advocates in Michigan today, michiganmedicalmarijuana.org.
Before you plead, call me, Attorney Michael Komorn.
An important and historical farm crop in American agriculture is returned after having been classified as a controlled substance and illegal. On December 20th, 2018, the President signed the Farm Bill, also known as the Agriculture Improvement Act of 2018, into law. The signing of the act was great news for the hemp industry, which amended the definition of marijuana in the Federal Controlled Substances Act. Hemp is now defined as the plant, Cannabis sativa L, and any part of the plant, growing or not, with less than 0.3% THC concentration on a dry basis. The plant itself is no longer a controlled substance. Hemp is one of the most versatile plants on earth. From clothing, fiber, paper, building materials, hempcrete, biofuels, CBD, and medical uses, it has been a part of America's industry for over 200 years. Even the United States Constitution was drafted on hemp paper. The time is now. If you're thinking of getting in the farming or processing of hemp, contact our global experts, legal, and consultation teams to make sure that you're on the right road when you venture into the new hemp industrial revolution. Michigan Hemp Industries has been a leader and advocate for the return of the hemp industry, so come be a part of the new revolution in agriculture in Michigan.